The night in the village was quiet, covered in a thick layer of fog that descended from the hills. The village was small, only a few dozen houses spread out along winding roads. The lights were mostly out, except for a single lamp in the distance that cast a faint glow on the cobblestones. Dogs occasionally barked in the distance, but otherwise the night was peaceful. Victor, an elderly man who had spent his entire life in this village, was preparing to retire. His house was on the edge of the village, surrounded by tall pine trees whose tops disappeared into the darkness. He had the custom of spending his evenings by his old lamp, reading the yellowed pages of books he had collected over the years. That evening, Victor felt unusually tired. His hands, calloused from years of work, could barely hold the candle as he lit the path to his bedroom. He left the candle on the nightstand, sat on the edge of his bed, and sighed deeply. It was just another ordinary day, he thought, before slowly closing his eyes and drifting off to sleep. But when morning came, Victor was not there. His door was locked from the inside. The bed was neatly made, as if no one had slept there. There was no sign of a struggle, no sign that he had left. However, the villagers quickly noticed something even stranger. There were no footprints in the soft earth around his house. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Panic gripped the village. People searched the forests, the wells, the nearby streams. No sign of Victor anywhere. A few older villagers recalled legends of people disappearing in their sleep. But those were just stories, right? As the days passed, the villagers tried to forget about Victor's disappearance, but then something happened that changed them forever. One night, one of the hunters passed by Victor's house and swore he had seen him through the window, sitting on his bed, looking out the window in the direction of the village. His face was pale, his eyes full of mischief. The hunter was scared, but the next day he returned with a few villagers. The house was still locked. The windows were closed. There was no sign of Victor. But one thing was not as before. A sheet of paper was found on the bedside table, although no one could remember it having been there before. On it were written only 3 words: "I never left." From that day on, the villagers avoided Victor's house. No, the most terrible events were yet to come. At night, some said they heard footsteps around the house, although no one was there. Others claimed to have seen a shadow standing outside the window. A boy from the village, naturally curious, ventured to approach the house one night. When he returned, he was as pale as a sheet. He said he saw Victor smiling at him through the window, but it was no ordinary smile. It was a smile that did not belong to a human being. No one knew exactly what had happened that night when Victor disappeared. Had he really left, or was he somehow still there, trapped between dream and reality? The villagers began to avoid the place. Some claimed that if you stood outside the house long enough on a moonless night, you could hear Victor's voice calling out to you. But no one dared to answer. One night, the house simply disappeared. The villagers woke up to find only an empty meadow in its place. There were no bricks, no boards, no sign that any building had ever stood there. Victor's house disappeared from reality, and so did he. But the legend did not die. People passing through the village sometimes reported seeing the silhouette of an old man standing by the road on foggy nights, looking towards the village. And every time someone tried to approach him, he simply disappeared. The villagers stopped talking about Victor, hoping that they would forget to erase this story. But how to explain the whisper of the wind that on the quietest nights brings words that are repeated over and over again, words that everyone recognizes.